California was sued, because of overcrowding in state prisons. A part of that response was to create something called non-revocable parole. They said that when people get out of prison who have non-violent, non-serious offenses, they will go on this non-revocable parole. They will be out and they can't be revoked, meaning they can't be brought back to state prison. They can get supervision, they can get services, but if they violate the terms of their parole, they can't be re-imprisoned. That was a way to reduce the number of people that was in state prison so that we can reduce the amount of people that was in state prison. So secondly, what happened, then that lawsuit turned into a 3-judge panel decision, which turned into what we recently saw, a Supreme Court decision, right? So the Supreme Court decision said California has to reduce its prison population from 170% to 110%, right? So California State Prison has room for 80,000 people. It currently has about 140,000 people, a little more than 140,000. They've got to get it down to 110,000 people in state prison. Part of the way they've done this previously is non-revocable parole. Moving forward after July 1st, when AB 109 was passed, legislation recently passed and signed into law by the governor, says that the same population, the nonviolent, non-serious offenders, they're not going to be on parole at all anymore. They're going to be under county probation. And so when these people who are in state prison come out of prison, they used to be under state parole, now they'll be under county probation. The second thing that happens is any new people who commit an offense, nonviolent, non-serious, they can't go to state prison ever. They can go to county jail and get out on probation. So that's the backstory of this case. And so Mr. Mehserle, as I understand it, and this is he's not out yet, so this can change. He's not going to be under probation, but because of what he was ultimately convicted of, he is considered one of these lower level offenders. I know much of the community would probably be offended by that statement, but that is how he's classified by the state system. And so when he gets out, he's likely to be on non-revocable parole. Ironically, had he got out maybe 3 weeks later, he would actually be under probation, not parole. But if he gets out on Monday, he's likely to be out on non-revocable parole and would be under the supervision of the state parole system.
And if I understand correctly, that means very little supervision, if any?
Yeah, like many government agencies, the parole department had year after year a slashed budget. And so what they have done is they've got to focus on the highest risk individuals. And so they provide most supervision to those who are convicted of serious offenses. Again, this is a point of contention around someone who is ultimately responsible for the death of another person. You would think that would be the most serious offense. But based upon what Mr. Mehserle was convicted of, his offense is considered lower level. And so non-revocable parole gets treated a little bit differently in different regions. The parole in the state is broken up into regions, but in many places, non-revocable parole means no supervision and you never can be sent back to state prison.
As opposed to, now give me the as opposed to, like as opposed to.
There's two as opposed to.
Right.
There is parole, like, so had he been convicted of actual homicide and when he got out, which would have been, he would have got out much later than coming Monday, right? When he got out, his supervision would have been much tighter. He would have seen his parole agent much more often. His parole agent would come to his house much more often. He may even be given an electronic monitor on his ankle. So even on parole, there's a difference of what he would have, the level of supervision. If he came out 3 weeks later, then next week he would probably be on probation. And on probation, we have a continuum of responses. And so he could have, again, been given an electronic monitor on his ankle. He could have been put in a task force, which means a probation officer and a police officer would have been visiting him frequently. And if he would have got out 3 weeks later, his probation could be revoked to county jail. And so there is a lot of differences even on parole or on probation.